Today, I figured we can go over the last season of iCarly and rank the episodes. I thought this was by far the best season of the show, so it's going to be an interesting one. Some of you might be familiar with my episode tier list on the channel. Well, this will be more of an in-depth version of that where we rank the 10 episodes of season 3 worst to best. By a good margin, my least favorite episode of season 3 has to be I Cause a Catastrophe. This episode departs thematically completely from the other episodes, and I feel it does it poorly. This is the only episode which doesn't progress Carly and Freddy's relationship, and it feels unnecessary. The episode's main focus is Tinsley, a character which has been a support character for this season's most confused character writing-wise, which is Harper. This of course is because Carly is spending more time with Freddy and there's much less space for Harper. A couple other things that don't work in this episode are Freddy out of nowhere getting a cat phobia and some really flat jokes, especially around the auction lady. With the now added context that this is the last season, Tinsley's character falls even flatter, bringing this episode down even further, as the ultimate outcome of this episode was Carly and Tinsley bonding. Next, at number 9, one of the funniest episodes this season, I Faked It. While I thought the jokes were landing really well here, especially the physical comedy, this season is weighed heavily on the story, which makes this episode feel like a slight bump in the road. Some positive things, I thought the idea of deepfakes were pretty clever, and it was fun to see Carly and Freddy react to an unexpected outsider meddle with their relationship. This is a Neville episode, and I'd like to say that there was a natural progression from iRobot Wedding, which was a great episode. The idea that Neville gets a sexual kick out of Carly's misery is definitely in character for the adult version of Neville, but something just feels a little off. It's hard to compete with all the great historical Neville episode, and this one definitely feels like it's on the lower end of that list. What really sinks this episode down a little further in the ranking is the subplot, which has to be one of the weakest of the season. Harper and Tinsley's relationship grows, but at the expense of us enduring the one episode character of Dimitri. I would throw this one on for the laughs, but in a strong season such as this one, this is one of the less memorable episodes that also has to compete with the better Neville episodes. Our next entry on the list is perhaps one of the two most ambitious episodes of the season, this one being the one that doesn't quite live up to what it could have been. I reunited and it felt okay. The idea of properly revisiting Ridgeway High, it's a biggie. I love that they addressed the fact that Carly missed senior year, and Freddy really butterflying in that senior year is well written. This school reunion episode could have been as epic as one of my favorite episodes, I Object Lubert, but instead it feels all around pretty silly. The focus shifts from the characters and their history and growth into a trivial challenge for Carly, which falls flat for me and reminds me of some of the weaker parts of season 1. We could have heard from some key characters like Sam or Gibby or Miss Briggs, but instead we got Shane, who wasn't as exciting. Other characters like Ripoff Rodney and Magic Malika were fun, but ultimately I wanted more. I think this could have been a great moment in the season to have a small conflict between Carly and Freddy, like perhaps Freddy realizing Carly held him back from butterflying in high school. Great potential, but bad execution, and as the title states, it was an okay reunion. This episode also features by far the craziest subplot as well, which I still don't know how to feel about. Spencer and his kids are pretty earth-shattering for the iCarly universe, and with this being the last season and this not getting an expansion, I feel like now it's more negative than positive for the universe, but it's still really fun and heartfelt, so plus points regardless. Of all the episodes in this season, I really wish this one was the one that was better. I Go to Toledo is next, and overall, this is a pretty good episode. First, the negative. Danica is meh, and we get very little of her in this episode. The house flip antics are more visual than narrative, and it's all really just background noise. What's really important in this episode is two things: the dynamic between the classic characters Marissa, Freddy, and Carly, and setting up our finale, and I'll say that this episode nailed both of those elements. We get to see Marissa stripped down, having a real talk with Carly, and Carly doing everything she can to be a Benson, exploring Marissa's feelings of her everything son growing up and simultaneously also getting married herself. It's a lot. This episode leaves a feel-good feeling that everything is happening just as it should, and it makes you realize everything is going to be okay, despite the differences Marissa's had towards Carly or how Freddy feels about Lubert. I love that we also learn more about Lubert and how genuinely happy he was to hang out with the guys. Really brings light to where the grumpiness came from in the original show. All around, I know a few of you don't love this episode, but it accomplishes so much and well, despite all the background noise. Next on our list is I Go Public. This episode is simpler, but that's really why it works. Carly and Credy are newly coupled, and Credy wants to go public while Carly is far more reserved. Seeing them overcome this and nail what's really important in this relationship is well done. The characters of Carly and Credy are so on point, interesting, and history-filled that just watching the two of them have these one-on-one conversations is the highlight of every episode we get to see it, and this episode doubles down on it. Seeing Carly be so protective of Credy and their relationship is indicative of how much it means to her, and Credy reassuring her that he has been put on this earth to support her no matter what is perfect. Of course, when Carly and Credy spend a whole episode together, just like they did on I Go on a Girls Trip in season 1, the rest of the cast needs something to do. And this time around, it was a pretty silly arcade machine, but it doesn't really take away from the episode too much, and this simple yet heartwarming episode fits right into this season. From here on out, I think all the episodes are really strong. The next 3 were very difficult to rank, but based on my gut feeling, I'd say I Create a New Ecosystem sits about here for me. The episode has the entire cast firing on all cylinders, and they all come together towards the end, a real rarity. Well, actually, perhaps it's the only time they do this. Carly and Credy are developing into a couple that have plans of potentially living together, and of course that means that Millicent and Carly are going to have to get along. This episode explores Carly's venture into potential motherhood, with talks of pregnancy, step-parenting, as well as dealing with Millicent's former mother, Gwen. Credy's dilemma in this episode with Gwen is looking rough, with Millicent likely going to be taken away for a while, but Carly steps in and proves to Gwen that she is right where she belongs, and that this relationship will take care of Millicent well. This is yet another puzzle piece fitting perfectly for the Credy relationship that has been building for over 15 years. We can expand further in this episode that it generally deals with family and the issues that can arise, with Marissa and Luber also having to settle some conflict in this episode. A really fun and important episode with our whole cast. In a way, it feels like a goodbye party. Okay, now, this season started off with 2 amazing episodes, and when these aired, it was one of the most exciting times to be an iCarly fan. The height of the will they won't they Credy story. But which of the first 2 episodes is better? I personally like I Like Your Shoes a little less. I Like Your Shoes is our parting episode with Pearl, a big character in the revival. It's also the episode where we see Credy's feelings for Carly re-emerge past the point of return. Unfortunately, this is also the episode that introduces Tinsley, probably my least favorite part of the season, but it doesn't take away from it too much. I thought Spencer's new business venue was pretty funny, and that ending scene with him looking at all his money is one of my favorite frames of this season. There's a lot to pick apart in this episode, but in summation, I feel they nailed the transition between the 2 seasons and everything leading up to Carly and Credy together. I Buckled I have at number 3. What a season opener, and this childish but realistic mutual avoidance to deal with feelings between Carly and Credy was a blast. It made us feel all wrapped up in it. Carly creating a whole reality TV series to avoid the subject was brilliant as well, and the way Paul ran this episode was also a gem. Ultimately, we also got to see one of the most important scenes of this season, the scene where Carly finally realizes her feelings for Credy, the buckle. And this was the most important piece of the puzzle. Credy realizing was secondary. This episode feels like a visual representation of the butterflies in your stomach, and I love this one. A perfect way to kick off the season. Now, my second episode of the season was no debate, as I believed one of the episodes is clear as the best of this season. Number 2 is I Have a Proposal. This is the one that I'm now seeing is causing a lot of controversy as well. The decision to end the season on a cliffhanger apparently was a big risk, and one the community deems unacceptable. Of course, there's a lot of anger and sadness on the cancellation of the show, me included, but looking at the positives, this was a beautiful episode. We finally, after 15 years, got some answers on Carly's mom, and that conversation between Spencer and Carly is truly what makes this show. Reminds me of their goodbye in I Goodbye. Carly and Credy realizing they feel so strongly about each other that they're ready to get married on the fly is also breathtaking, and I'm thankful we got the confirmation of that. There is just too much beauty here for me to put this episode any lower. What a finale, and what a pivot this would be if it had led to a 4th season. Loved it. Now lastly, of course, I Make New Memories. My favorite episode of this season is my favorite episode of the whole revival, and just maybe my favorite episode of the entire iCarly catalog. This episode does exactly what I wanted the revival to do. It covers Freddy's feelings towards Carly in the original, how they changed and why they changed. This episode also makes it clear to Carly how Freddy felt. It's all in balance here. The physical tool of the flash drive frying was perfect. There was nothing more heartbreaking in a sentimental sense than losing photos of a time that was the best time of your life. This episode perfectly brings Carly and Freddy together through their history. The episode doesn't make it too easy for either one. For example, it really forces Carly to not run when faced head-on with the issue. The arc and the kiss, all of it quintessentially is the soul of the show. The subplot is fine enough, but in a way unnecessary. Either way, this episode is 10 out of 10. Imagine watching all of iCarly episode by episode, start to finish, until you get this payoff. They could really have ended it there too. It's simply one of the best romance stories in all of fiction. Lastly, I wanted to praise the performances of Miranda and Nathan as they defeat the script with their emotion. It's everything. What a phenomenal season. I loved it. Beautiful to see the growth of this production team and how they gave it their all and gave us one hell of a final season, knowingly or not. Let me know your list in the comments below. What did I get wrong? And also, what other videos do you want to see? Let me know. See you guys in the next one.